Hello, everyone. So, my name is Abby, and I am the young adult assistant at the Twin Lakes Library System, and I use she, her pronouns. So, today on Slice of Life, I wanted to recommend some feel good TV shows, and these are just shows that, personally make me feel really good when I watch them, and make my family feel really good when we watch them together. So, I decided that I would go ahead and give you a little list. I'm going to be talking about 4 shows. I did want to do an honorable mention really fast though, because I didn't put any reality television on here, but I really recommend Queer Eye as well, because that's very lighthearted and fun. But all of these shows are available on streaming platforms online somewhere, so just know that. So here we go. So my first recommendation is going to be my personal favorite show of all time. I watch it every single day without fail. I've probably seen it over 50 to 60 times all the way through, and that is Parks and Rec. So Common Sense Media recommends this show for 13 and up, but personally I would recommend it for a little bit more mature audience. So I'd say 14 or 15, given some mature content that is in the show, but just know that. So personally I think this is the best TV show of all time, but what it's about, if you don't know what it's about, is it follows government workers in a small town, fictional town in Indiana called Pawnee, and they work in the Parks Department. And the main character is the enthusiastic deputy director, Leslie Knope, and she loves her job, and she always wants to do what's best for the people of Pawnee, despite how difficult they make her life sometimes. But she's very kind and she's caring and she tries really hard, and she's incredibly positive and just a wonderful female role model. I love the show because all of the characters are so lovable. They're all wonderful. They're all funny, and I like the dialogue between them, and I like the interactions and the dynamics. I think they're really good. This show has a really strong emphasis on friendship, so I think, and they do a really good job with it. All the characters are pretty good. The one character they even sort of make fun of, they all still kind of love, Jerry. So I really like that. Like I was saying, Leslie Knope herself is a really strong female role model, but also they're very strong, positive female friendships in this show. So I think that it's really good to watch just to see that dynamic, because I don't feel like I always see that in TV. And every time I watch an episode of Parks and Rec, I always feel a little bit better about life. I've never felt worse about my day after watching an episode of Parks and Rec, because it always just makes me smile and makes me laugh. And there are 7 seasons of that show, so there's a lot to go through, and all of the characters are great. So yeah, I really recommend it. Best show of all time. The next show that I will be talking about is called The Good Place. So this is also recommended by Common Sense Media for ages 12 and up, but again, I would say there's some mature content that maybe I would recommend for a little bit older, but that's of course up to your discretion. So if you don't know what The Good Place is about, so it's about a woman named Eleanor, and after she dies, she wakes up in the good place, and she gets there and she realizes that there was a mix-up and she actually should not be in the good place because she wasn't always the nicest person when she was alive. So she's kind of trying to deal with the fact that this is a case of mistaken identity, and realize that she didn't want to go to the bad place. She wants to stay in the good place. So she has to sort of try to better her attitude in her afterlife versus the way she behaved when she was alive. So, learning to be more selfless, caring and compassionate. And she does that through mainly the help of her afterlife soulmate, because you get paired with a soulmate in the good place, and his name is Chidi, and he sort of tries to teach her to be a better person than she was when she was alive, because he's an ethics professor. So the reason this show is good, again, really funny characters. I really think, if I don't like the characters, I don't really like the show very much. So all of these shows that I'm going to be talking about, I think all of the characters are great. So know that. I think also it explores some really important concepts. So what it means to be good and like how we classify people being good and who is good. But it also still manages to be really lighthearted and fun. So it's a good like mix of like important conversation, but also like fun and comedy, and like you really like the characters and the journeys they go on and their interactions with each other, and sort of trying to navigate like the good place and change and grow and learn in the afterlife. Yeah. Also, one of the funniest characters on that show is Janet, and she's like the computer automated system that works in the good place. So I would watch just for her because she's great. And then also there's a lot of diversity in this show, so I really like that as well. I like seeing that in television. The next show that I'm going to be talking about is Steven Universe. So this is recommended for ages 10 and up. But personally, I think you can be whatever age and watch this show. I feel like this is an animated show, and I feel like some people think that when you talk about a show that's like animated or a cartoon, it's only for children, which isn't true. I think you can watch shows and get something out of all of them, like, Avatar and She-Ra and a bunch of other cartoons that came out that all have really good, important stuff going on in them that I think everyone at every age should watch. And I think Steven Universe is one of those shows. So this is, again, it's an animated show, and it follows a 14-year-old boy named Steven, who is the son of a human father and a mother who is a part of this civilization called the Crystal Gems, who are like these gem people that came from outer space. It's interesting. You just kind of have to watch to sort of figure out how that all happens. So he's predominantly cared for 3 friends of his late mother. So his mother's name was Rose Quartz, and she passed away, which is kind of explained in the show how that went down. But he's predominantly taken care of by 3 of her friends. So that's Pearl, Garnet, and Amethyst, and they all have very different personalities. They're all very striking characters. So they're all taking care of him and kind of trying to guide him on understanding the side of him from his mother's culture and civilization. So it explores not only his life on Earth, but like the history of the Crystal Gem people, and like the interactions and the conversations they have with each other and the relationships they have with each other. And it's really deep, actually. It's a really thought out, well-constructed narrative and like storyline that's happening there, which I really like. There's like a continuous storyline. Like some cartoons kind of just have like episodic vibes, so they're not like, it's just like a storyline that is only in that one episode and then it isn't carried through. And I think Steven Universe does a good job where it's like sort of episodic, but there's also like themes that are going throughout. So reasons why I really like this show and why I think it's really feel good. Steven is the sweetest character ever. He's such a good character. Like, he's such a nice boy. He just wants nice things for the world, and I really like that, and I find him really endearing. So a very lovable character. I really like all the Crystal Gems. There are some times where I'm like, you're annoying me, but there are other times where I really like connect with one more than the other, or connect with all 3 of them really well. So I really liked seeing them. Also, the show is kind of just like all about love, and not like necessarily romantic love, but like paternal and platonic and family relationships, and like just loving the world that they're in and loving the place that they're at. And I think that's really sweet, and it's nice to see, and it's nice to see the positivity that occurs in that show. Let's see what else. There's also, so kind of spoiler, there is like a war that happened on the Crystal Gems like planet, and they kind of talk about that, but what they really are talking about also is like hope for a better future, which I think is awesome to see, especially in a show that is technically for children. It's really nice to see them, like talk about like strives that can be made to make a better world. And so, like, again, kind of like The Good Place, it handles like mature themes and like important themes and themes that we should be thinking about in a really articulate and approachable way, which is nice to see, again, because it's a children's show, technically. You don't always think that like children's programming can be super educational about the world, but Steven Universe does a good job at trying to be educational about the world in a way that younger children can understand and perceive. And then I also really like that there is strong character development. Like I was saying, Steven is a very sweet character. I really love him. He's very positive and wonderful. You get to really see him come into his own over the show. And like see him develop and grow. And you get to see that in the gems too, of course. You get to see how they develop and grow into who they are at the end of the show. So I really like that, and I like seeing them grow. Also, they're like, I think the episodes are, if you've ever watched like SpongeBob, there's like a 15-minute first episode and then another like 15-minute episode or something, and they're combined into one. I think you understand what I'm talking about if you've seen SpongeBob before. That's how Steven Universe is. So basically, each little segments can be, when paired together, they're like a full like 30 minutes, but when put separate, they're like 11 to 12 minutes. And one of the streaming sites that I watch it on, they do the episodes like they're the 11-minute segments, which is nice because if you don't have a lot of time to watch something, but you want to watch something to like make yourself feel better, you can watch an episode of Steven Universe. And it's 11 to 12 minutes, and then you feel better. So just think about that. Okay. And then the last show that I wanted to talk about, and I feel like I don't really hear anyone talk about this show anymore, which is sad because I watched it when I was on air and I really loved it. It's called Speechless, and Common Sense Media recommends it for 12 and up, and I'd say that's pretty fair rating. I don't remember any super mature content that happened. So yeah. So this follows a family who, one of the kids has nonverbal cerebral palsy, and this is, the creator of the show actually based it on his own experiences because he is the brother of a person who has nonverbal cerebral palsy. So he kind of used experiences in his own household to come up with the show a little bit more. But it follows them, and they move again at the beginning of the show, which apparently seems to happen pretty frequently based on the way it is perceived, because the mother, Maya, is really focused on making sure that JJ, the son with nonverbal cerebral palsy, gets everything he needs and proper representation and disability representation that he deserves to succeed in life. But it seems like, you know, a lot of the places they go to are not providing those for him, so she moves to find places that will take care of him, which is amazing, but it also leads to like a struggle for her to connect with her other two kids, Ray, her son Ray, and her daughter Dylan. So this show is kind of just about them like staying in one place for the first time in a really long time, and like learning to connect with each other and be together and be a really awesome family. So it's about kind of like their new life and learning to connect. So why I think this is a great show, it advocates really heavily for special needs and disability representation, and like good disability representation that doesn't pander or patronize people with disability, but like shows them as really full people like they are, and shows their value as people who contribute to society and are functional and successful and awesome. So I really liked that. I liked seeing that because I feel like that's something I don't always see in television shows or in books sometimes. I feel like sometimes that struggles, but I think the show did a really good job at being super respectful. Let's see. So it shows like the importance of true advocacy for people with disabilities, and like listening and actually making sure that you're being a true advocate for people with disabilities, and that people with disabilities are given the opportunity to speak up and represent themselves without being like dismissive or condescending. So that was really awesome to see. And again, lighthearted like family relationship, but also makes you think. I keep saying this, but I really like stuff that makes you think. So like I like lighthearted stuff, but I also really like want it to make me think and like think about the world that I am in. So I like shows that can make me do that, but still kind of like are able to remain comedic and warm and lighthearted. So the characters are all very real and funny people. I like Maya is very funny. JJ is very funny. He's very sassy, and I really liked him. And they like make mistakes pretty often in the show, but they're also really good about owning up to their mistakes and like admitting where they've have flaws in them. And then I really liked JJ's characterization, who I believe he is actually played by someone who has cerebral palsy. So that was really cool to see, kind of like an own voices, like real true experience, like an actor who actually has that play. But he has depth. He's not like out here being called like an inspiration and all this stuff. He's very quick to address that. He doesn't like that. He's very real character, and I liked seeing that because, again, sometimes I feel like forms of entertainment struggle with that. But I think, like, to wrap all of these shows up, they are shows that, like, make you think, and they sometimes talk about topics that are a little introspective and complex, but they do it in a way that's very lighthearted and warm, so you're learning things while also being entertained and, like, having a good time, which I like in television. I like seeing that. So yeah, thank you for joining me today and watching, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.